top tune, the Average White Band, that one. Play that funky music, white boy. But there we go. So I'm interested. This is a learning design session. So let's do something about learning design. I work, so if you weren't in the room before, my name is Andrew Jacobs. I'm an independent learning consultant. My consultancy is called Learn Learning. Yes, I do podcasts. Yes, I do voiceovers. Yes, I have a voice for late night radio. What I would like to know is what your design challenges are. So I want to know in the messaging, so in the chat, if you can put the chat where the GIFs have been running, just the little chat button just halfway down on the left-hand side, I want you to put in there in the chat, what's your learning development design challenge right now? What are the problems you've got relating to learning and development design at the moment? So in the chat, what is your learning and development design challenges? I can see Grace is putting something in there, was and isn't now. What's your learning development design challenge? What's the thing forefront of your mind? What's the big problem you've got with learning development design right now? What's the big issue that you've got around design? It's the end of the day. That's what it is. Everyone's a bit tired. They just want to go, oh, Andrew, just tell me the answer. Just tell me the answer. That's what it is. I'm not going to do that. I need you to work. Oh, Lisner, I love that. Creative blocks. That's good. What else? What are the things that are causing you problems? New to the field, so establishing a clientele. That's interesting, Orville. Okay. I'll come back to that one in a minute. Well, tell me what your design issues are. What's the design problems you've got? Is it to do with the specific technologies? Is it to do with the thinking around it? Is it to do with systems? Is it to do with people? Is it to do with the things you're being asked to do? What are your learning design challenges right now? OMAE, more like thinking around it. Okay, could you expand on that in the chat for me, please, OMAE, in terms of the thinking? The concepts of learning. Alanma, that's really interesting. Concepts of learning. Which concepts of learning are the problem ones to piece together? This is why it's useful having these conversations. Dealing with audience globally that don't have direct access to understand as a persona. That's a brilliant answer, Bakamala. So how wide is your audience? That'd be useful for us to know. Let's come back to the first one, the creative blocks one. I'll talk. You carry on responding. I think it's really useful to put your thoughts in here. Let's go to the first one. So creative blocks. So I think one of the problems is that we don't think creatively enough in learning development. There's a really simple way of doing it. So the way that I say to people, if you have a creative block, is write out the problem as if you were describing it to a 5-year-old. So what you do is distill it down to make it as simple as possible. And only at that point, then work out how do I make it more relevant to the people I'm working with. So the creative block is I can't get past this thinking around, I don't know how I'm going to do, yet again, I'm going to do compliance training. So ask the question and go, well, let's make it about how a 5-year-old can deal with it. Orville, new to the field, so establishing a clientele. Don't worry about establishing a clientele, Orville. Think about establishing a style. What is your style? What is your approach? What are the principles that you have around learning design? And that's much more important. The problem we have is I mentioned it in the session I was chairing earlier, we have a mentality in learning development that we work on a shopkeeper basis. So people come to us at the end of the process and say, this is what I want. And then we have to bend and conform to specifically what they want. If you have a style and a very clear ethos, and practice in the nature of what you do, and very clear principles. So people don't come to me, for example, for e-learning design, because you know what? I'm not going to design e-learning. What they will do is come to me and look at how I can do stuff differently to e-learning design. It's very clear principles I've got. So thinking about what your style is, thinking about what your principles are what's more important, Orville. The thinking around RMAE. So there's some ideas running and narrowing. You could mean trading other components. Absolutely. So there's no new ideas around learning and development. It's really interesting. You can go back, you can see pictures, that were taken in the Middle Ages, that were drawn in the Middle Ages of people sitting in classrooms and people at the back mucking about, people at the side falling asleep, the teacher at the front standing in front of the room. It's the same things we've always done. We've always relied on these same things. What's different around it now, from a thinking perspective, is we've got so many more different channels in ways that we can put that stuff out there. However, there are fundamentally 3 approaches that you need to take in your learning design. The first A you need to understand in learning design, and that people want, is about awareness. So I need to do learning because I need to be made aware of something. I probably know it, but I might have forgotten it, or I've done it in another organization and there might be some slight differences in this organization, or it's just plain forgotten. It's something that I did so many years ago I've completely forgotten. For example, I used to be a butcher back in the day. Okay, so I'd work in a butchery, and one of my jobs was to joint lambs. If I had to joint a lamb again now, I know the rules have changed around it, so I would need to be made aware of what the new rules are. For example, we didn't have all the health and safety that there is now, when I worked in the butchery. So I guarantee that there would be very different rules about using bandsaws and so on and things like that. So I just need to be made aware of what those things are. So that's the first day from a design perspective. Second day from a design perspective that we need to think about is about acquisition. What is new information that people have to take and code for themselves? And this is where we get stuff wrong. We call it learning, and it's not learning. What we're doing is giving people information, and they need to code it for themselves and turn it into knowledge. And so there's a piece around acquisition. How do we help people acquire information? And predominantly, this is what we do in learning development. We love producing acquired information, and we design tons and tons of content which we assume people want to acquire. However, what people really want is the third A, and the third A in learning is application. And what we should be doing from a learning development perspective is finding opportunities for people to apply the stuff that they're doing and thinking about from a learning development space. So awareness, acquisition, application. So from thinking about it together and putting different concepts together, track it back. Is this entirely new information I'm giving to people? Acquisition? Possibly, probably not. If it's awareness and making them aware of it, that's a different design mentality that you would take as you would to acquisition. If it's application, things they've already learned and they just need to practice somehow, again, that's a very different design approach that you need to think about. So in terms of what we need to work with people, don't always assume it's about creating new content. Let's have a look. What other comments we got here? Awareness, the purpose of learning. Yeah, entirely, Kamala. Awareness, acquisition, application is the 3. Ensuring to include all the right standards. That's really interesting, isn't it? Because I have a big conversations around this one. People don't trust peer-to-peer learning for that because they go, well, they might not learn the right responses. They might not learn what the rules are. So we force them to do e-learning. That means that they will learn what the rules are. Now, what they're doing is they're learning that e-learning is a task that they have to complete, and it's not something they want to do. Whereas if we allow them to learn it for themselves, socially, across a peer network, they will learn what's right and what's not. We never used to worry about people giving dodgy information via email, but that's how people will communicate in the workplace. Why do we assume that learning development should be any different? So in terms of standards, be absolutely clear on what the standards are that are required, but make sure you build tolerances in towards that. The danger is what we do is we do what the subject matter expert wants, and it then becomes a task, an acquisition for people to complete rather than application. Go back to your subject matter experts and they say, our people need to learn information security. Absolutely, of course they do. But what you want is you want them to learn good information security that they will apply in the workplace. So speak to them about how you can do that rather than just pumping them full of information which they may not use. There you go, 10 minutes. Happy with that? You wanted a tight 10. There's a tight 10.
Yeah, you can keep it going. I'm sure you haven't touched all the questions. I'm enjoying it. I mean, I'm enjoying the conversation, about forcing people to just take in knowledge and information rather than letting them practice. I agree with the fact that it's not every time that you need to create new content. At times, you just need to let them practice more. There's this saying that practice makes perfect. The more people practice what they know, the more they put it to use, the more they get to know about it. And there's something about the way adults learn. Adults like to take charge of their learning. They want to make their own meaning from the content. They want to create by themselves. So you don't need, I agree with you, you don't need to get new information into people at times. At times, you just get them to research, get them into an activity that helps them do some research, and then by themselves, they can make their own meaning, thinking about how this relates to their work, how it relates to what the experience they've had in the past, and then how they're going to take it forward in reflective learning.
Exactly. So I've just posted a link to the DIKW pyramid. So this is something that we all learn about that then we forget when we come to in terms of adult and workplace learning. So the DIKW pyramid, D stands for data. So there's data everywhere. Okay, there is data right now happening about this session, but we don't know what that data is. When we know what that data is and we become aware of that data, it becomes information. So we take the data and we understand it, it becomes information. That information, and when we understand how to apply it in context, it becomes knowledge. And the transition of information from information to knowledge is what learning is, where first level learning takes place. The first level learning is understanding what data to get, and people rely on us to put that in front of them. But actually making the transition from information to knowledge is learning.
Yeah.
So what we should be doing is helping people understand how to move from information to knowledge. In most cases, that's not going to be through an e-learning module. It is going to be about understanding their context, exactly as you said, where they come from and what do they know beforehand. Moving from knowledge to wisdom, that's where expertise comes in. When you become an expert in something, you have wisdom. So, for example, the example I always use on this one is tomatoes. Okay, tomatoes are a fruit. Okay, that's knowledge. I know tomatoes are a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put a tomato in a fruit salad. It's the difference between the two. It's true, but this is what we do in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do this in the workplace. The difference between knowledge and wisdom is knowing not to put a tomato in a fruit salad. And it's exactly the same in work. What we have is we have people at work who come back to us and go, I want all this knowledge to be pumped into my people, but they're not going to use most of it. What they need to know is the stuff that's really relevant, which is why I focus on the 3 A's.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's I have never really looked at it that way. The 3 A's. I'm taking that out of this session.
Feel free. It's not copyright. You take that away. It's not copyright for me. So I give away loads of ideas for free, and that one you can have for free.
I'm loving the reactions in the room. Actually, so we have some other comments or questions in here.
I can't read this last one. It says another difficult thing with adult learning is the change from classroom to. Let's have a look. Is that to video? Video, especially for the older generation. Okay, a listener.
To virtual.
Right. To virtual. Okay, right. Okay, so really interesting question, listener. So, really interesting thought about this. So, it's not age-based is the first thing. We need to get out of our heads the idea that there are, it's an age-related issue that we have in the workplace. It's not. I know, grey-haired people who are acutely aware of how to use technology and younger people who don't. The difference is there's a guy called Dave White from the University of Oxford. He talks about people who are digitally resident or digitally visiting. Now, someone who's digitally resident will do everything online. They will understand. They will work online. They will live online. They will have all their bills paid online. Everything is social. You've got people then who only digitally visit. So they visit to do their work and so on. There's very few jobs now if you work in a knowledge industry where you're not required to do stuff in a virtual space in some form or another. The challenge is people who only digitally visit, so they use the technology to look at Instagram on the way to work, and then in their workplace don't use any technology at all. So my son's partner used to be a carer. She used to go around different care homes or different places and help people who are at home. What technology would she use for that? Well, actually, she had to use technology when she booked in, booked out, and so on. So she had to learn how to use the different technologies there. Every organization is using technology in a different way now. And what we have is there's 4 levels of digital literacy that we need to consider when we do this, listener. The first one is can and can't. So some people can do it and some people can't. And that's a question of ability. But they're probably the smallest group, because that's the group who we need to look at and go, what do you need to learn? The second group we have are will or won't. And that's an attitudinal issue. So that's an attitude where I know I've got to use it, but I won't, because they don't want to. They happily create what's called a digital twin, and they will digitally twin the process. So you will have a digital process and an analog process, and they will do the two together. What you have to do is take the analog process away and not allow that analog process, and to force them to do the stuff digitally. The third issue, which is an issue potentially, is have and haven't. And that's about access to the technology and the bandwidth. Really interesting point is everyone's talking about video now. Video is a big growth. Everyone's using video for everything. If you're working off a 4G connection in a relatively remote area, a video is no use to you because you're not going to be able to watch that video. So we have to be absolutely clear to make sure that we can create the technology and put the technology in such a way that people have access to it. So we're saying about virtual may not be the right solution for everyone because they won't have access to it. And the last level of literacy, digital literacy, is about should and shouldn't. So should we be putting the stuff online or shouldn't we be putting it online? Just because we can doesn't mean we should. And I'm seeing this with a lot of technologies right now. I work with lots of different providers. Because we can use AI to create loads of courses, should we be using AI to create loads of courses? I'm not sure necessarily. The world doesn't need more content, for example. So are we using the technology in the right way? So the 4 levels of literacy are will, won't, have, haven't, can, can't, and should, shouldn't. Does that help, listener?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm enjoying the conversation. Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. It's been, I mean, that's such an interesting conversation. And you can see the reaction from the people. I mean, interestingly, we have come to the end of the time this session is supposed to end. Our speaker is back here and his network is looking good. I don't know if he's able to talk now, Onesimus.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey, the proper person's
so
here.
Sorry.
I was just killing time until you got here, Onesimus.
Yeah.
If people want to get in touch with me, my LinkedIn profile, I'll just put my LinkedIn profile in the chat. Please feel free to get in touch.
Everyone.
If you want to have a chat, feel free to get in touch. I give everybody half an hour for no cost. I'm more than happy to have a chat with people. If you want to talk about anything in particular, I'm more than happy to have a chat and talk about the design issues that you've got.
Yeah,